Mr. Chairman.
I call the Honourable Minister Simon Power.
Mr. Chairman, Part 1 of the bill establishes just the purpose of the bill, which is to protect the interests of security holders and, as the member pointed out, residents of retirement villages, and to enhance investor confidence in financial markets and retirement villages. As members will be aware, a little used provision in the standing orders relating to cognate bills, where which we discovered some time ago in another piece of legislation, has enabled us to mesh these two bills, this and the Financial Markets Authority legislation, together for the purposes of their first, second and third readings, but alas not in the committee stages. So we're dealing with it separately from that bill at this time. But the idea behind that little used provision is that the substantive arguments or debate about each of those bills is so inextricably linked to the other that it would waste the House's time to deal with them separately, and those matters so overlap that it makes sense to deal with them at their first, second and third reading stages together. However, because that isn't able to be the case in the committee stages, we're dealing with it separately now. One of the things that, there is an SOP in my name which replaces references to the Commission, that is the Securities Commission, with the Financial Markets Authority to reflect the fact that they're being dealt with as cognate bills. It also inserts references to the KiwiSaver Act to include non-restricted schemes within the licensing regime. A non-restricted scheme is a KiwiSaver scheme where the manager of the scheme is the issuer of interests in that scheme rather than the trustee. But look, the background to this legislation is simple. When I first became the Minister of Commerce, one of the issues I was most concerned about was how the frontline regulator had behaved, or not behaved for that matter, during the collapse of so many finance companies. I extracted the work around trustees and custodians from the broader Securities Act review and said that I was going to bring it forward and deal with it ahead of that review, which if it passes, if it's the committee's wish that this passes through the stages of committee tonight, then we will be able to do that in a prompt and efficient way. One of the things I asked early on of officials with respect to this particular role of the trustees, though, was this question. What if we didn't have them? What if the frontline regulator role that they had played was just removed from the equation? Because the reliability of the frontline regulator to talk to the investors about product, how it was classified, and to protect or oversee the investment, protect's a strong word, oversee and supervise the investment was the relevant job of the trustees. And I came close to asking that question in a legislative sense. In other words, what value does it add for the investor to have the corporate trustee in the model? Things had to change. The passive role that the trustees had adopted up until recently was not going to satisfy me or this government, or I imagine for that matter any party in the House, that they were adding value and oversight to investors' decision making. In fairness to the Trustees Association, Corporate Trustees Association, they came to me and said they were prepared to change the way they did business, and this bill is as a result of those discussions. The Select Committee has looked at it carefully, and I was persuaded at the last minute it was worth keeping them and it was worth proceeding with this piece of legislation. The Select Committee's done a good job of getting into the detail of those issues. But the sticky issue for the committee, and frankly for the government as well, was the issue of retirement villages. Now, I understand that this causes some consternation to members of the industry. But actually the truth is this. If a security is being issued by way of a licence or some other instrument for those living in a retirement village, they deserve the same protection as those who are purchasing a plain security or a security as we know it in terms of the capital markets or, for that matter, private markets. And if the money and the instrument are being overseen by a frontline regulator, then they also deserve the protection of legislation in the context of retirement villages. So the government moved, and I note that the Select Committee has recommended to continue the inclusion of retirement villages in this legislation. This, funnily enough, was the first step we took for investor protection. It's now inextricably linked to the Financial Markets Authority, which in itself is inextricably linked to the wider Securities Act review, but progress is being made, and I'm grateful to members of the committee for their assistance on that.